Welcome to Data-Driven Sports Betting. I'm A-Train Bets, and I use my brain to make bets. And in this video, I want to take a deeper dive into how we do bet sizing and why it's so important to understand how to size bets, how to use Kelly Criterion, and how to use this all within the context of A-Train Station. Right. So I want to get in and let's just start very simply. Let's come over here and we're going to start and we're going to go into the settings screen first. And so this is the bankroll settings that I've been using or I used on today's live stream. Bankroll of 22,000. This should be the amount of money that you have available for sports betting. This should be the total amount you're theoretically willing to risk. You probably don't want to actually risk all of this, but it's how we start the calculations to determine how much you should bet on an individual play, right? So I, in this case, am using 22,000. The reality is that I probably have more like 30,000 allocated across different books. Some of it's locked up at offshore books that I can't withdraw from yet. And so I don't always count all of it, but I use this as a reasonable metric, especially for the live streams, because I want to be able to have the bet sizes be reflective and not so high that they're too uncomfortable, but that they are meaningful enough that hopefully we can drive some meaningful profits and grow that. So 22,000 is what I'm using, and I'll adjust that. And typically you want to adjust that daily. I tend to do it a little bit less myself because I'm doing a live stream and I know people are tailing the bets. I don't adjust mine as often as I probably should because I want it to be relatively simple for people to size their bets based on what they see me doing on the live stream. So if my bankroll were actually $22,564.17, I could put that in there. It's going to be offset by the fact that all the information that we're working with sports betting are estimates and assumptions and shades of gray, nuanced calculations. So we do all these calculations. They're all subject to data quality that's not that great because most of them are estimates. Most of them are like, well, this book's got these odds and this book's got these odds. That's not a really good metric of like, what is market truth? Like our markets are not efficient, and yet everything we do is based on the efficient market hypothesis. There's a bit of irony in that, but it still can be effective because we don't need it to be perfectly precise. We need it to be directionally precise, and that is the key. And so we know we can do this directionally accurately. We just know that the precision, the difference between 22,000 and $22,417, it's going to be within the margin of error easily. So I try to keep it simple so that the people following me can adjust accordingly. Kelly multiplier, I typically recommend people start with 25% for whatever their bankroll is. I've actually been under that for a while just because I wanted to be extra conservative as we're rolling out A-Train Station. And one of the things that you definitely don't want to do is jack this up super fast. So I would do it at I had it at 12.5% yesterday. I upped it to 15% today, and I'll continue to increase that marginally over time as I get more comfortable with the higher bet amounts. But the last thing you want to do is win a bunch of money, jack up your multiplier percentage or your bankroll setting, and then lose it all back faster because you got too aggressive. The moment you feel smug about something, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. Variance will get you. It will get you every time. So be humble, take things methodically. You want to increase it because you've got more bankroll to work with, but don't overplay it. I've made that mistake too. I've gotten too aggressive and got unlucky and lost a lot. That happens. Even when you have an edge, that happens, right? So rounding the bets to the nearest $5, that's all fine, right? These are convenience items, and the precision, again, it's not going to make that big a difference, right? So that's where we're selling. Now, the key thing, I want you to understand something about the Kelly Criterion. And I have other videos that talk about this, but I need to remind you, if you haven't seen those other videos, you might want to. But everything with the Kelly Criterion is based on perfect information. Kelly Criterion is a risk of ruin calculation. It is basically saying if you have an advantage, but you're gambling and there's an amount of variance, what should you be betting to avoid the potential of losing everything. And that's why you adjust that bankroll size, and the multiplier is actually set that way because we are dealing with imperfect information. And it's a sloppy way to deal with imperfect information, actually. What we know is when we start analyzing the actual plays. So when we go over here and we go to the bet side, go to the plays, we actually start analyzing this. Let's find like this soccer money line. This will be interesting. What do we see here? We see different holds. These holds at different sports books connote that these books have different levels of confidence and they're requiring different amounts of money to offer these markets because they know if they offer less hold, more people will bet there, like Pinnacle. If they offer higher hold, they're not as interested in getting as much action because they need more premium. People know that they're not getting as good of a deal. We know by definition, we have widely varying amounts of confidence. This is a market that has actually quite a lot of confidence in it. Pinnacle's rocking a 3.71% hold compared to something like Travis Kelce anytime touchdowns. I can guarantee, yeah, look, Pinnacle, 6.51% hold. Lyft with a 11% hold. Touchdown scorer, who knows? Pinnacle's even like, we're not sure. Most of these books don't even offer two sides. They're just like, oh, we'll give you one. That's the kind of thing that when Kelly Criterion is a risk of ruin calculation based on perfect information. It was designed for like blackjack card counting and stuff. It's designed for financial industry stuff. Much greater levels of precision than we have in sports betting. And yet we're like, we use Kelly bet sizing. Well, we do, because it's the best we have, even though we know it's imperfect. However, that's where the confidence-based bet sizing will come in and help us. Today, we don't have that fully enabled yet, but we're going to get there. So stay tuned. You might see it by the time you watch this video. It might be there. But if I go in here, just Josh Allen anytime touchdown score, we can see that the Kelly Criterion bet sizing is actually still pretty useful. We just might want to keep it in check, because when this is a good example of a market where there's not a lot of confidence, yet based on what we have been able to determine with this no vig line, and if you aren't familiar with this, we have other videos that cover that topic. But when you see Josh Allen anytime touchdown scores at FanDuel, like bet $175 on this, that feels a little bit high. Because there's not much confidence in this market. Maybe I should bet less. That's good instinct. That's a good instinct. When you're like, oh, I don't think so. Like if you knew you had a 5% edge here, yeah. But you don't. I mean, look at this. This is a shaky market with a lot of variance. There's weather concerns this week. There's all this stuff. If you think this is a real 5.59% edge, you need to just take a step back, right? You just got to say, okay, what's real here? If I'm making this play, I'm probably making this play at a significantly less amount. And actually, in this one, we just did the live stream a little bit ago, and I didn't even make this play. This is something where I would say, like, you really have to calibrate and recognize that each piece of data that you're working with is one more piece of insight about a situation, and there's no hard and fast rules. Right. That and when you're starting out, you want those hard and fast rules, right? You want those hard and fast rules to say, oh, man, like, just tell me what to do. It's easy. The problem is you just do that and you check out mentally, you're never going to get any better. And so in this case, like, this is a good example of Rachaad White receptions under 3.5. So what do we have going on here? We have a bet. This is a bet that I made at FanDuel because I would get limited too much at ESPN bet, and Hard Rock hasn't gone live in Illinois yet. So look at it. We got BetOnline and Pinnacle, two sharp books that I use in my ratings. Right? Reasonable hold here at BetOnline. A little bit on the high side of Pinnacle, but not too bad. And you have a pretty significantly different market. Everybody's started to fade to the right on this, but the sharpest books that we have, BetOnline and Pinnacle, have seemed to move the most. Pretty reasonable, compelling case. FanDuel here, 4.56, decided to do it for about 100. I believe this was recommended for a little bit more. And as you can see, when I click on it, the recommended wager that they would have had for this was 130. So I reduced it because I'm like, there's some amount of movement in this market. I don't love this bet as much as some. The percentage is pretty good, though. I like the trend. I'll take it, but I'll take a little bit off the top because my confidence just isn't as precise. And that's the thing with Kelly Criterion. Think of the recommended bet size as the max you want to play. And if you can find reasons that you don't love the play, but you still want to make the play, just reduce back, just rein it back in a little bit, And then if you think about it that way, Kelly sets the max and then your confidence pulls back from there. I think it's logically a fairly easy thing. Very, very rarely, and it does happen, but very, very rarely will I play a higher amount than the Kelly recommendation. And typically why I would do that is because I'm seeing movement in the market that is so compelling that I don't even think the current analysis fully reflects how good the market opportunity is. So it's a pretty rare circumstance when I'm like, oh, wow, this market's way more off than it looks. Then I can be like, all right, well, I'll add a little bit to this. It happens. But for the most part, I'm looking to play less. So, and that's a really good thing. It's like there's only so much bad that's going to happen if you underbet your bankroll. If you overbet your bankroll, a whole lot of bad can happen. So again, another really important reminder there. So when we look at it overall, one of the things that we have at A-Train Station that will help you understand what's going on is when you are saying, okay, what is happening in this particular game? You can see that I've got $654 in bets that I've already made on this game. So as I'm going through and I'm looking at the plays screen here, I want to be thinking about what am I risking on each game as well as what am I risking on each bet. This is one where I'm like, I might want to underbet. If I'm going to look at any more of these bets, I might want to bet a little bit less than I would if I was just starting out. And so that's something that you're going to want to think about too, is like, where is that distribution of where you've invested your betting capital in these games? Because you will see games where like this Miami Dolphins Kansas City Chiefs game, $500, that could really impact my day. If this one game goes sideways and I get a few things wrong, because things will tend to clump together where you see positive EV opportunities. You're going to see things that are going to be more likely to win together or to lose together. You don't tend to have tons of offsetting stuff within one game. And so you realize, like, if you're looking at individual games as far as being kind of a micro portfolio, and then the overall collection of bets for a given day or a given weekend as a more macro portfolio, these are things that you're going to want to keep in mind too as you're bet sizing. When there tends to be a lot of different opportunities, like on an NFL game, you're going to want to be very cognizant of that and what you're risking, versus when you're seeing something like on a typical basketball game, it's kind of in the middle. You might see a soccer match that has just a money line. That's not going to concern you too much. Or a lot of college basketball, there's not going to be as many player props offered, so the opportunities are going to be more limited. Or tennis matches is going to be one match. Like, it doesn't really matter if you're betting a bunch of tennis matches at one tournament. Those are all pretty uniquely distributed. There's not a lot of correlation between those matches. So you may see some weather-based, over-under correlations and stuff. But like, for the most part, you're going to see things within one game are going to be worth thinking about as a collection versus just on their own. And that's true of both the bets you're choosing to make as well as the bet sizing that you're choosing to do. So there's a lot that goes into all of this, right? This is something where you have a lot of factors. There's all this data that comes at you from so many different directions. And in that decision-making process, you got to kind of consider all of it. And that's where, like, I know it's nice. It's compelling. It's interesting. You want to have that simple answer. There's no simple answer here. We can't even get simple data to work with. We can't even get consistent and high quality information on what the true odds of something happening are. We got to estimate that too. So it's an estimate based on an estimate based on an estimate based on some gut feeling based on a back of the envelope calculation, and that's what you decide to bet. So there's all these places where the thing can break down and you can't even measure it very well because it's all kind of estimates. It's nebulous, but it also makes for a really compelling game, right? The game of sports betting is a really compelling game because of all of those difficult to assess, data-driven types of scenarios. So that's what you have to do, is start to build up awareness of how does this data talk to you and how does it drive your decision making. But when done well, you could have a totally different approach than somebody else, and you could both be making a lot of money doing it because they're effective in the way that you play. Just like any other sport, people have their strengths and weaknesses. The sport or the game of sports betting is one where you want to understand, where do you have a lot of strengths and how you analyze things, what you're interested in. Think about what you're interested in and say, I really love going through the game logs and understanding how these players are performing. Is that useful? Well, yeah. Is it useful enough to be betting on that alone? Probably not. You got to do some other stuff. But use that strength to your advantage, right? Not everybody's going to have that. So figure out ways that you can start to bring that together. But one of the most important things is, whatever you do on the betting strategy side, start to really be thoughtful on how you size your bets. And this is why we don't do units at A-Train Station. You won't, maybe you'll see the word units somewhere, but we don't use units to determine bet size. We use dollars and currency because that's what you're betting in. Why abstract that? Or you should be estimating in dollars, because that's what you're betting with. That's what you should be talking about, is how much dollars are you playing on this? Because Kelly Criterion lets us evolve beyond units. Units were useful when you were doing all this by hand calculations and you're writing it down and you're doing long division and shit like that. We don't need to do that anymore. It's 2020s now, right? So estimate in dollars, the computer will spit it out for you correctly, right? Use the dollars and think about the dollars and then adjust the dollars. Don't fuck around with units. It's not a 4-unit play. Give me a break. You bet dollars based on a bankroll size. And you can say at what level, do I love this bet? Do I like this bet? But if you're trying to say, oh, I like this for 1942 and no, this one I'll play for 24.97, whatever. Like that, nobody's that precise in how you're assessing this, right? But the Kelly Criterion gives you, based on the EV calculation that you have, the percentage EV calculation that you have, and the likelihood of that event winning, Kelly gets you a good part of the way of what you should be betting. We think adding confidence to that based on all of these assumptions that are underlying everything, that's probably an important thing too, but you can do that back of the envelope because your confidence is more than just a quantified calculation. We think we can help that by quantifying some aspects of it, but we really got to get you to a point where you can understand, hey, this is what Kelly says, but I'm not that confident. So if it was perfect information, this is what I would bet, but I don't have perfect information, so this is what I'm going to bet. That's the thing I want you to be thinking about. And that's the thing that's going to really help your betting strategy be more successful, because you're going to be risking less when you have less confidence. That's how it works, you know, and so risk more when you are more clear that this is a good play. And so those are really important lessons. I think it was worth talking through a little bit. And you know, we'll have more of these videos that go through some of the tactics and strategies of working with A-Train Station, working with anything in sharp sports betting. You use a different tool, fine. But with A-Train Station, we are specifically building it to support this way of thinking, this way of using data, this way of kind of bringing in information from every direction to a singular point of decision, to the single moment where you decide, am I betting it or not? And if I am, how much? That's what our software is designed to do, is to help you get to that point and work with you in whatever your strategy is to optimize that, to help you solve for the next 5 minutes, the next $5. Time and money. Those are your two most precious, limited resources, and you want to use them as effectively as possible. And that's what we're here to help you do. So with that, everyone, thank you for watching this video. Hopefully it helped you think a little bit more about how you're sizing your bets and will make you that much more of an effective bettor. So with that, this train is leaving the station. Until next time, save the units for the pros and do betting like the pros.